All right, hello everyone, and welcome to a discussion of the series that Nikhil and I have recently finished and loved, adored in every single way, and it is Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Tad Williams. I'm holding up my Broken Binding edition because I love this so much. I don't buy a lot of special editions, but I love this so much that I said, you know what? I need the special edition by the Broken Binding to properly show my love for this wonderful trilogy that is sort of tetralogy, four book, three book, whatever you want. I don't care. I'm actually indifferent about that. It's just wonderful storytelling. That's the bottom line here, right? So Nikhil and I were very fortunate to be part of a big buddy read of this series, and we were finding ourselves to be the most enthusiastic members of that group in terms of the our love for this. And we had actually had planned initially to do this together anyway, but we got sort of absorbed into a bigger buddy read. So we always wanted to touch base, just the two of us. But we are very thankful. I'm sure I'm speaking for you as well as myself when I say we were very thankful to Aaron over at Booked and Busy for organizing that wonderful buddy read that we were part of and interacting with all those lovely people. But here we are now, Nikhil. It's our turn to just gush and enjoy our series. So what is your non-spoiler? We're gonna start non-spoiler for a bit, but we're gonna go
Sure.
into spoilers for the entire series. We'll wave our hands around and warn people when we do that, but we're gonna start out non-spoiler. So Nikhil, what is your non-spoiler assessment of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn?
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, Philip. This is so
Oh,
much fun. I'm so excited that we get a chance to chat because I've missed you, and it's always
yeah.
nice to be able to chat about the books we love. And this is no exception because I didn't know what to expect because I had heard these books were written in the late 80s, early 90s. It's kind of that bridge series between the classic and modern fantasy. And I've actually liked some of those bridge series. Like I read The Wheel of Time, which I guess would be considered a bridge
Yeah.
series, right?
Yep.
And I'd read George R. R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire series, and I wanted to see kind of where the germs of those ideas came from. And it's always kind of good to go back to the source. And I had read one other book of Tad Williams, Otherland, and I just loved his prose. So I was excited to see like how would I feel about Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. And first of all, I gotta apologize because I feel bad. I left you hanging on that big group discussion a couple
Oh, the
times.
last one?
The
Yeah,
live,
yeah.
you were outnumbered in your in the team Tad
Yeah.
there, but no, I thought the series was so charming. I loved it for both I loved it for the same reasons I think some other people maybe weren't as keen on it,
Uh-huh.
which was I love that it took its time. You know, it was never in a rush, but it never felt like it was meandering to me. I
Hmm.
felt like the every aspect of the world was really fleshed out and he took his time intentionally. And if you just kind of go in with those expectations and let it wash over you, you're like in the world, which is very, very hard for, I think, to do in an epic fantasy series where there's so many names, so many different types of people and things like that, different relationships and themes and things. So I thought that that was superbly done. And one thing I really appreciated about the books was how, at least to me, they got better as they went along. And not only that, all the way through, there was like a through line of it just getting better and better. Like if I look at the last few pages of Two Green Angel Tower, that was among my favorite stuff in the series.
Yeah.
And yet I loved it all, but it really felt like the payoff was worth the journey, you know?
Yeah.
So I was just I'm so excited to read more Tad Williams and more Osten Ard related books and yeah, I'm a true Tad fan for life, I guess.
Good, good. Yeah, and since you mentioned it, we are going to be continuing with the follow-up series, the sequel series, The Last King of Osten Ard. We'll be starting that in January. If anybody wants to jump aboard with us, or just, if you've already read it and follow our conversations, we'll be meeting on Nikhil's channel, Shelf Esteem, for the first book. We're going to cover each book, I think, in a discussion. So I'm really excited for that too. What I said a couple times now, last time I was on my Weeks at War segment on my channel, I said that this series is for me like a tweed jacket. It just feels
Mm.
right.
I love that.
It is for me, and of course, if you're familiar with me, I do love my tweed jackets. But yeah, I know it was just a wonderful experience. It was a reread for me actually. So I had read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn many moons ago, a long time ago. It's somewhere between 20 and 30 years ago. I don't know exactly when, but it was a while back. But I loved it the first time and didn't even realize there were certain scenes that were just embedded in my memory, just seared into my mind. And I'll talk about some of those later. But and then the other things I hadn't remembered, but obviously they were sloshing around in my mind somewhere because I just realized as I was reading, starting with the Dragonbone Chair, and in the and as I all four books, it was like, oh, I must have had this. This influenced me in ways that I didn't realize in terms of my own writing, even because I realized, oh, wait, he did that. I thought I made that up when I wrote my Dan trilogy. Tad Williams did it first. So it's not exactly the same thing I'm doing in many ways, but in some ways, I realized, wow, this had a bigger influence on me than I realized even. And like you, I love this period of fantasy, the kind of like late 80s, 90s, the transition in many ways from a period when there was a lot of imitation of Tolkien, who is my absolute like Tolkien for me is just I loved everything Middle Earth when I was a kid and grew up with it. He was my favorite writer of all time until fairly recently when Stephen Erickson took that position for me. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me how Tad Williams really did take this classical, all these nods to Tolkien, some of them better than others, honestly, but he does his own thing. He took the genre in a direction and probably doesn't get enough credit really for how much he took the genre, even as he is certainly, I think the influences from something like Tolkien are there, they're evident, but he does some interesting things. It's grittier, it's darker, and despite that, there are some really wonderful kind of traditional themes about heroism and friendship and compassion and seeing behind the stereotypes to connect with the other. There are all these really great things that he does in here. But yeah, I just love this, and I agree that each book gets better. The ending for me, the last several hundred pages were absolute like heart-stopping, fantastic. And then the last 100 pages or so had me in tears several times. Just, the tears were flowing freely as I was reading some of the great stuff at the end, which we will have to talk about
Oh yeah.
when we get to the spoilers. So this was a huge win for me, this reread. Can't wait to get into The Last King of Osten Ard. So yeah. Anything
I was
else?
gonna ask you. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask you actually. For your reread, did you feel different going into it this time? Like, or was there something else that resonated with you this time that didn't, when you were reading it when you were younger?
I'm a more experienced reader now, and I think when I was reading it before, I certainly appreciated the prose. And now that I've actually published my own books, I often read with an eye to learning from these masters like Tad Williams. And I was even more in awe of his prose and his world building and just the many things that he does so well in this series. His character work too.
Yeah.
Just great stuff. So his coming of age stuff in here. A lot of this is the bread and butter of fantasy, but we don't realize. I think it's not quite fair to. I think we ought to when we read something like this that's a little bit older now. And it's amazing to me that we're talking about this like it's old stuff because this is only
Not that long ago.
not that long
Yeah.
ago. Come on, um, but. I think we do it a disservice when we think, oh, I've seen that before. That's been done. But wait, he did it first, right?
Right.
I mean, the other people did it after him. So, that's something that I think sometimes we might fail to appreciate when we come to something that feels familiar, but we got to realize, okay, well, who did this first, actually?
I think about that a lot actually. Is like, Song of Ice and Fire has just become such a huge part of the cultural lexicon, and like
Yeah.
everybody knows of it, or as the other title, Game of Thrones, right? So,
Yeah.
and so I think it becomes very reductive to look in the past and go, oh yeah, I've seen that before, but it's like, but you haven't really seen it that way because it's that is what inspired this other stuff. So
Yep.
actually, you know, if you, I think if one goes in with that kind of expectation, they can extract from it the nuggets of what makes that so great rather than dismissing it, which is very easy to do, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, it's just a heap of praise from me on this one. And yeah, and I do agree with you though that this is if we're recommending it to people, I would say for people who don't mind a slow burn, if you love Robin Hobb's writing,
Mm.
if you're a Tolkien fan, I feel like you have a good shot at really enjoying Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn because these are writers who take their time, but you used the right word when you were talking payoff. The payoff at the end of the series is just so tremendous if you allow yourself to drift into this sort of attachment to the characters,
Mm.
to allow yourself to appreciate them, flaws and all, because they are flawed. That's what makes them human, right? The main character, it's not a spoiler to say, the main character starts out as a 15-year-old kid. And
Yeah.
I don't know what you were like. I'm sure you were a very wise 15-year-old, but I was an idiot when
No way.
I was an idiot
Wishful
when I
thinking.
was
Yeah.
15. I'm looking at Simon in there doing stupid things, and I'm thinking, yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of checks out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Actually, a funny side tangent about that I was thinking about recently as we were gearing up for this discussion, but you know, we two are probably the uh we're older than some of the other people
uh-huh.
in that group that we were in, the larger group. And
Yeah.
I know Simon really rubbed some of those people the wrong way, which I totally get. And I wonder if I had read this in my early 20s or something, would I have felt similar gripes? Because you know, it's like when you're still kind of close to that age, but you're kind of past that age,
Yeah.
you know, you could one can look back very critically at that stuff and go, "Oh, I'm not like that anymore. Like that's bad or that's
Yeah.
not the right way." And as one gets older, we can appreciate that time of like look at it almost in a with a fondly, you know, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
bemused in a bemused way. So,
I think you're absolutely right about that.
yeah.
And certainly, I read it in my 20s the first time.
Right, right. Yeah, that's right.
Now I'm in my 50s, and I loved it even more, honestly, this time. So that does speak well of it for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've done our non-spoiler segments. So if you're here just for that, then thank you so much for stopping by. Go read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, especially if you are up for an incredibly beautifully written, slow burn, but with lots of highs, especially toward the end. But in each book, really, each book has its crescendo, actually. But the series as a whole crescendos in the fourth book, the second part of To Green Angel Tower. But yeah, there's some just gorgeous, gorgeous writing and the character work. If you allow yourself to become attached to these characters, beware you're gonna probably need a handkerchief or two. So, yeah, with that, let's dive into spoilers, Nikhil. Are you ready?
Cool. Yes, I am.
All right.
Um,
So I wanted to talk about. I figured there's such a vast cast of characters here, and I want to talk about as many of them as we can, and whoever we want to talk about, that is. But I thought we could start with the themes because that
yeah.
would allow us to roll in several characters at once as we discuss these themes. One of the things that felt very prominent to me in this world that Tad Williams, it's kind of a, you could put a map of Europe over Osten Ard and you could roughly say, the various cultures there. The Erkenlanders feel very much like an Old English culture. Their names are very
Yeah.
much taken from Old English. And you've got the Rimmersgard part of it, which is very much Norse, Viking inspired. You've got the Yakanak, Binnebik's place, and they're very much like Inuit or
Knew it.
something of that
Yeah.
nature. But you've got, or maybe even, I don't know, the Sami, perhaps in the north of Scandinavia. But anyway, you've got Hernestir, which is Celtic, obviously, to the hilt. You've got, and of course, Naban, which felt to me like modeled after sort of a Rome that had been once great, but now is in it's its doddering years, if you will.
Mm,
It's
mm.
it's not the glorious empire it once was. And then the Ren, which is doesn't quite fit anywhere in on this Europe map, but I'm glad he threw it in there because that does give us another culture. But yeah, it felt very much like a model on that, but at the same time, he gives it a unique spin, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
terms of the religion, it's reminiscent in many ways of medieval Catholicism. But Aiden, and there's just, instead of Jesus, in that all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there's enough that feels familiar here for us to easily find ourselves immersed in this world.
Mm.
I think, right?
Now that you're talking about it, Philip, I also feel um, that this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would love to know your thoughts on this because you've read some of the older fantasy and how it compares to modern. But I felt similarly to how Wheel of Time does it. This was kind of previous to that, of course, but the idea of the confluence of cultures and
Yeah,
how they fit in and how they both reflect our our actual real world history, but then also feel like where does that end and then the fantasy aspect of it begin?
yeah,
It meshes together so well. And I think that's what makes the world feel so lived in. Even from the first book, I feel even though there's a lot of characters, a lot of different, cultures, you really get a sense of who they are because there's enough of both,
yeah. That's
that it's,
beautifully said.
yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. And amidst all this, these human cultures I've been talking about, you also have
Mm.
some older races, the Scythi particularly. There are giants and little what are those little things that come out of the ground? Those
Oh, the
all
big
those
in I forget what it's called. I know exactly what you're
little
saying.
grubbers, whatever they're
Yeah,
called.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, the Scythi are really the main thing
Yeah.
here, who were the inhabitants of this place, although they also came from somewhere else at a certain point, and then came to this place out of a catastrophe, a crisis of some sort that overtook their homeland and ended up in Osten Ard. I'm sure they had another name for it, but they were the original, or they were there prior to the human cultures who came along and displaced the city. Much like you have these stories in the Celtic myths of these migration myths where you have this like fairy culture, the Fae or the She, or whatever you like to call them, elves, who were there first, and then the humans come along and displace them, and usually it's because of some weakness, like iron is a big thing that the humans bring with them. It's
Mhm.
like when Europeans came to the Americas and brought viruses with them that the natives were much more susceptible to. That's kind of what the deal. That's how the city were sort of pushed aside, but there are still remnants of them in this world. So you have all these cultures, you have the city, and amidst all this, a very prominent theme of othering, where
Mm.
you have this history, bad blood between the city and the humans, and yet you have characters like Simon who his very first time he meets a city is when one of them is in big trouble. And it turns out he didn't know it was Jiriki. He just thought, this is terrible. What's happening? A man in the woods was about to, had trapped him and was treating him like an animal and was going to slaughter him. And Simon is able to, this is one of the things I love about Simon, even from the beginning,
Mm.
though he's a dunce it can be very self-absorbed sometimes, he also has this innate compassion in him. And
Yeah.
his first act is to save Jiriki in this moment, and he sees past the scary other monster thing that
Mm.
this woodsman is seeing, treating him this trapped Scythe like an animal to be slaughtered. And I felt like this is a theme that you get between the various human cultures as well. You have the various antagonisms and the idea that once you can connect with another person, like Simon does with Jiriki, and become
Mm.
friends, or Simon and Binibik is another great example.
Right. Yeah.
The trolls of Yakanak are looked down on by the other human cultures there, and Simon is and Binibik have the most beautiful friendship you could ever imagine, to the point where at the end of it all, Simon says outright, "You're the best friend I ever had."
Mm.
So what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on this theme of othering in
I think that's, yeah, I think that's just so beautifully said, Philip, because I feel it kind of highlights to me why Simon is such a wonderful character.
Uh-huh.
Is even at his most, I guess, self-absorbed, he, at least to me, the first few, I feel like the first, I think, 70 pages or so is just him thinking about himself, wanting to explore Green Angel Tower, doing his whole thing. And to me, instead of it feeling more like a malicious intent of self-interest, it was actually just more head in the cloud and being oblivious rather than like overt self-interest at the cost of anyone else. It was just he wasn't thinking about it because he was obliviously like he's a dreamer.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with age as well. And so I think his heart was always true, and that's why he saw through and rescued Jiriki a couple times in the series,
Yeah.
and then which had great payoffs later on for him.
Yeah.
And then of course Binabik, and even within the Quanuk culture, there
Yeah.
was a sense of othering, right? With Binabik also being like outcast and
Yep.
based on his actions and kind of how he dealt with his own culture. So I think there was othering from that standpoint. There was othering in terms of even the protagonist antagonist of the two brothers Elias and Joshua,
Yes.
and Elias was successful at kind of demonizing Joshua, and oftentimes Joshua would be like, "Oh, I'm honestly, I don't want the throne. Like, this is not my intention at all." But Elias had it in his head, and Pyrates had kind of poisoned his mind, and it was just about like if we demonize or make this other side feel like they don't belong, then it'll
Right.
be easier to rally the troops around destroying them.
That's a great observation. And you see characters like Fangbald, for example,
Yeah.
or Guthwolf in his early stages. He
Mm,
evolves into something else because of what happens to him. But these kinds of people, they go through life othering. They go through
mm,
life basically thinking of other people as lesser, as either monstrous or just inferior, and that is how they justify their violence toward other
mm,
people. And you even see it in another culture, the human on human, the Remmersmen and the and Benedict's people, in Yakanik or the Canuck people. They
mm.
essentially, they call them trolls, right? That's not a
Yeah.
flattering thing. And the uh, the Yakanik people also have a word, Kruhuk or something. I
Oh
forget.
yeah, yeah, right.
For
Yeah.
the Rimmersmen, it's also not a flattering thing, right? And yet you have a character like Sludig, who is initially treated as very much a threat, as an other. Oh, you're a Rimmersman, therefore
Mm,
we're going to execute you, right? He ends up being great friends with Benedict and honored and given the opportunity to come back to that place as an honored guest,
mm.
which is beautiful, and that I love this sort of thing. I live for this kind of theme where you have peoples who see each other as other, as a threat, as the foe, as inferior, as monstrous. And the thing that happens is once you actually get to know someone from that place, you those stereotypes can't hold up,
Mm-mm.
if you
Yeah,
allow yourself to actually connect with a person and see them in all their complexity and see the various ways in which you are so much alike, and appreciate even the differences, all that hatred can go away, right?
yeah, yeah. So true. I think one thing I really love about that theme is how grounded it is in our world. That it's really a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Othering has always been the for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, if you look at even tribal warfare, it was all othering.
Yep.
The root of these conflicts are usually based on that. We're too different um to be able to share resources. We're too different to be able to share land or whatever it is. And
Yep.
on
And
down the
we
line to present day. But yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right. And we see the consequences of holding on to the sense of being wronged versus seeing the humanity in the other. Whereas we have these two different, they're related to each other. You have the Norns and you have the Scythi.
Hmm.
And their attitude towards humanity is very different. And that's the main, that's really what's behind the plot of the whole thing is the
Yeah.
Norns, led by their queen Utuku, want to rid the world, this place of these human vermin, whereas the Scythi have actually, particularly with the people of, Hernis Sadik, the Celtic type people,
Hmm.
they had a real connection with them going back a long way. So they're capable of seeing and appreciating their humanity. Of course, we're talking about races that are very alien to us, and we are alien to them. They live, they're not quite immortal, but they're kind of immortal, right?
Hmm.
They have a different way of seeing the world. They're much more long-lived and therefore have a different perception of life and what it means to be an individual in the world. So all of that difference makes it maybe the gap bigger, but they're
Hmm.
still capable. And you see, characters like Count. Oh gosh, what's his name? The guy from
Oh, um,
Megwin's love interest of Tragically Never Happens.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I
I'll
forget.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, but he is even now I forgot where I was going with that, trying to remember his name, but there we are. Aolair. Aolair.
All right, Air, yeah,
Aolair.
yeah,
So I forgot where I was going with Aolair, but we'll bring him up again.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, he's got a tragic journey, that's for sure. Not everybody in this gets a happy ending. That was one of the saddest parts of this for me was
Yeah,
his arc and Megwin's.
Megween's arc. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that was really tough. So yeah, sometimes life it can hurt us so much that it's very difficult to heal.
in,
And
in, in that to that point, I think sacrifice was also another theme that I felt like was a
uh-huh.
huge part of this whole series. I mean, Megween's sacrifice kind of towards the end,
Yes, which
and
helped, which enables Simon to make it. Yeah.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I think like even Joshua and like his ability to go, we must retreat in order to live to fight another day.
Yeah.
At times, I think like there was sacrifice kind of throughout the book. I mean, Morgan is sacrificed in the first book.
Yeah.
Um, so it was almost like each sacrifice allowed the next person to carry the torch
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, and Simon, of course, is racked on a very, cross-like in a way, the wheel. It's a wheel
Hmm.
in this case. And he had all these dreams about it, and finally he is actually put on a wheel
Yeah,
where he is tortured by Inch. And as you said, from there he's enabled to kind of help do, as he's not the only one doing it, but he contributes to the saving the day there at the end. But it never would have happened without Megwin's sacrifice.
right.
Miriam is another one who makes a tremendous sacrifice. She ends up having to kill her own father
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the arrow that's been carried through all these books. This arrow has been this white arrow has been carried around the Jariki's arrow that he gave to Simon as a symbol of what he owed to him. Finally, at the end, that arrow does its job, doesn't it? When
yeah, yeah,
Miriam shoots her own. Well, it's sort of the Storm King. It's Inaluki
yeah.
inhabiting her father's form, but she sees because he comes back in that moment. Such a moment of compassion, actually.
Mm,
And it's Simon initially too who says, I don't hate you. I refuse to hate you. I know. And Simon brings that in that notion, and we see Elias coming back there a little bit, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
when Miriam shoots her father, which is a tremendous sacrifice, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, Miriam L's story, I think, was probably one of my favorite arcs, actually, sub
Uh-huh.
arcs. I just found her character to I always found whenever it switched to her POV, I was especially excited to read because she really goes through so much to get to those final events of the book and how she grows as well,
Yeah,
you
from
know.
Maria to,
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole episode, one of the things I did remember from the first read vividly
Mm,
was how disturbing the journey Miriam takes with that creep on the boat,
yeah.
which was very difficult to read, and her feeling the guilt of her initially wanting to sort of have this relationship, and then realizing what he was, and then being trapped with this guy. That was very disturbing for me, the way he used
Yeah.
and you know and credit to Tad Williams for making that a real journey for her,
Mm,
where I feel like oftentimes we can you'll see somebody throw something like that into a story and then it doesn't come up again, or the
mm.
character just moves on and somehow they're okay. With Miriam L, you really see a lot of struggle, and it plays out in her relationship with Simon
Yes.
subsequently,
Yeah. Yeah.
where it is a difficult thing for her to feel that she is worthy of loving someone and being loved by someone because of how she feels that initially, at least, she went along with this creepy guy, whose name I
Mm.
can't remember. He's not important. Let's forget him.
Yeah. Yeah. He who must not be named, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting everybody's names here, but I think everybody knows who I mean. But yeah, that was very disturbing to me. Uh,
Yeah.
and at the same time, I think that Tide Williams handled that very well, especially considering it was written in the 80s.
Yeah. Uh,
When a lot of authors would have just had something like that and then not really dealt with it.
I was thinking about that. Actually, I was reading that specific kind of
Oh,
few
it's
scenes that
Aspidus.
were those.
Aspidus is the guy's name.
Aspidus, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, as I was reading those few scenes about it, I was also very impressed with how Tad Williams really went bold with it. He didn't shy away from it. It wasn't off screen, so to speak, but it was never gratuitous. It was always it he managed to balance that where you feel what you would feel if he had put more in there, but he didn't need to, you
Yeah.
know? Um, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. No, he did very well with that. That
Yeah.
stuck with me. And another thing that really stuck with me was all the stuff beneath the surface in Asua, in the old, in the uh when Simon in Dragonbone Chair goes underground, uh,
Yeah.
to the old Scythy, remains of what was, and goes on that journey. Oh my goodness. I mean, that was for me, that really stuck with me. That was something I remembered vividly.
Oh man. Yeah.
And,
That's
and can
one of my
honestly
favorite
say,
parts of the book. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, and it goes back there in the final books too. We get a lot in there as well. But I feel like that's the first time Simon goes down in there and then finally emerges in a graveyard and witnesses when Elias is given sorrow by the Norns.
yeah.
I feel like that's a really wonderful fantasy kind of rebirth, kind of a moment. Like Simon is being born again into the world, but as a much more mature person than the boy who went in there, right?
Yeah.
That
Oh,
was
it's beautiful.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Um, one thing that also really kind of stuck with me was that beautiful relationship between Rachel
Oh
and
my goodness.
Simon. I thought it was amazing because where they started and where they ended, and really some of the first scenes in the first book
Yeah,
are with Rachel and Simon,
yeah,
and she is this kind of taskmaster who
right.
won't like put up with any nonsense, and it's like they're at complete odds because
Yeah,
Simon is just a kid who with his head in the clouds and everything.
yeah.
And I think the very last scene in the last book has them both in it.
I love that.
um
Yeah,
and I remember the specific thing that really kind of struck me was when Guthwolf had gone blind and he was in those, kind of catacombs, I guess you could say.
good.
And Rachel was putting out food, to
An act of compassion.
act of compassion.
Yep.
And what she didn't know and what Simon didn't know is she was actually saving Simon.
Yes.
I think that's just so poetically beautiful. Oh man.
I so agree, Nikhil. That is such a great point. And that scene at the end when she calls him Mooncalf again, and he's all, Rachel, it's me, I'm
Yeah,
alive,
yeah,
and he's being goofy Simon, but he's a man now.
yeah.
And that is when he says out loud, actually, all that time I actually was a stupid, resentful kid, and I didn't realize
Mm.
you were my mother. I just broke down, and
Yeah,
that was where I really lost it. I was bawling there. But yes, she was a mother to him, and
yeah,
it's true. We do, I think, when we're young, resent our parents for parenting us, for doing their job, for making us do stuff and be
yeah,
responsible and grow up. And then as an adult, he's gone through so much and he's matured and he's become a man, physically and emotionally and in every way. And now he recognizes what Rachel did for him. And there was such a touching moment. And then she just calls him Mooncalf.
yeah. It's so beautiful. It's honestly that specific arc is probably one of my favorite arcs in any fantasy book. I
Uh,
don't know what it is, but there's just it just hits. It's a gut punch, you know? It's just beautifully emotional.
yeah,
And I love the idea that these two characters barely interacted for most of the series. But you were always seeing things through Rachel's POV, then Simon's POV. They would
yeah.
often think of each other, and Rachel
Oh,
didn't even think he was alive at this point, you
right.
know.
She
But
thought
they're
he was dead. And that's why she went after Pryades was
right, right.
because she thought, and he had killed Simon,
Hmm.
when he killed Morgana's this whole time,
Yeah, yeah. You know, it gets me also thinking about this theme of, I guess you could say, responsibility, maybe, and how it affects the two kind of protagonists, antagonists of the series that are not Simon, which
Yeah,
is Elias and Joshua.
yeah,
Elias being the antagonist and Joshua being the protagonist, the guy who's going to save everybody, you know.
right,
And how Pyrates is pulling the strings the whole time, and he's kind of two steps ahead of everyone.
right.
But I just think about like Joshua, the way he takes responsibility. He takes himself too seriously, or so he thinks, but he
Mm,
also has a lot of reverence for the throne. He has a lot of reverence for the process of choosing the best person for the job. Like he's very much strict moral code. Whereas Elias, you know, has a sense of responsibility to the throne, but he buckles under that pressure and
uh-huh,
he becomes much more susceptible to the weaknesses that Pyrates ends up taking advantage of, you
right.
know, that he would do anything to, you know, bring his wife back again or and so I think yeah, I think there's almost two different perceptions of responsibility in this series that that someone from the outside could easily manipulate
Yeah,
to their own will, which I thought was really brilliantly done. Because you know you see Elias getting weaker and weaker as the books go by, rather than stronger, which I thought was a really cool choice because he's supposedly supporting the baddies, you know, and he's getting the sorrow and he should be becoming more powerful, but he's being, you know, kind of sucked dry. And I love that idea that he was suffering as well. He didn't know it, you know.
yeah, that's a brilliant point. And you make me think of another thing in here, which is the idea of redemption, or at
Mm,
least understanding. So most of the villains in here, there are exceptions. Most of the villains in here, we get a sense of backstory, we get a sense of motivation, a sense of deep loss, suffering, and at least reason. So the Storm King himself in the Luki, obviously he was lashing out against the humans who destroyed his people.
mm,
Very understandable, and very understandable that this whatever's left of him, this spiritual entity that's incredibly bitter and angry about that horrible, tragic loss of his people, would want to restore them somehow, right? So his whole big plan is actually pretty understandable, in many
mhm,
ways. From the perspective of the Scythe, or even from the Norns, they're kind of justified in not liking people.
mm,
These are atrocities that occurred there. And then you have Elias, who lost his wife and blamed his brother Josua all this time. So there's a real complex thing going on there, and Josua
mm,
probably was in love with her even. And he wanted her back, and that was his initial motive for enlisting Pryades' help. Pirates,
Yeah.
on the other hand, he doesn't have a mustache. He's bald everywhere, but he's if he had a mustache, he'd be twirling it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
his motive is just power, greed. He's a narcissistic, you know, unpleasant person. We'll just leave it
Yeah,
there. You
yeah.
know, I don't see any motives or reasons or suffering or tragedy for him. You know, he just seems like a really awful human being.
Yeah, yeah.
Hadrak is another one though, where we see redemption. Uh,
Man, yeah.
Hadrag is his real name, but you know, there's a character where you feel for the guy because he went too far in his studies, and but that's you know that's a sort of a Faustian thing, I guess, anyway, isn't it?
Mm,
The idea that hey, knowledge is a good thing. That we're curious, you know, and there was a real spark I sensed to this guy before he became what we see in the
mm,
story, which is somebody who's self-loathing, cowardly, you know, and is weighed down by such guilt because of what he did, and that whole relationship with Miriamel is so interesting and complex in terms of how she's angry at him sometimes, and sometimes she's, you know, tries to be more understanding, and even
mm.
there's some affection there. And in the end, of course, he gives his life to save her and the others as they're
Yeah.
fleeing from Green Angel Tower, right?
Mm,
But what an interesting character. For you, is he do these characters who get, let's talk about, you know, Inaluki if you
yeah,
want, or Elias or Padraig or Kadrak if you will. Are
yeah.
these characters redeemed for you, or what is exactly Tad Williams doing here for you?
Man, that's a really good question, and it, it really deserves some thought because I think on one hand, one thing I loved about Kadrak's character was there were a few times where you felt like, oh, maybe he'll redeem himself, and he didn't, you know? And he would always choose that lesser route. And of course, ultimately at the end he did. But I think it also highlighted the idea of self-loathing and its consequences on not only yourself but the people around you, like the people who are struggling with something, their inner demons, let's say. It's an affliction for them as well. They don't necessarily want to do that. But they feel compelled to keep making the mistakes and perpetuating those, you know? It's because that's what he believes he is, so he's going to keep choosing the weaker option, the path of least resistance, because that's who he truly believes he is. And I
Mm.
think Miriam L's compassion and trying to see the good in him, even when, like, when I was reading some of the things that he was doing to betray the mission over and over again. I don't know that I would have been able to act as strongly as Miriam L did, in forgiving and being compassionate towards his situation. So I thought that interplay was phenomenal. I think Elias was in some ways a victim as well,
Uh-huh.
a victim of his ego, a victim of his drive for reclaiming the past, maybe you could say,
Yeah,
you
his
know,
grief. Yeah.
his grief. Yeah. I did feel so a funny side reference, but I did feel like this series gave me both uh, a viewpoint to look at more modern fantasy like Game of Thrones in a different lens, and also stories of the distant past. So, for example, when I was looking at Miriam L's character and how she was kind of preyed on by Espetus, it kind of reminded me of Sansa's character in Game of
Oh,
Thrones, in
sure.
Song of Ice and Fire a little bit. And it's like, oh, I can see the germs of where some of these things were influential for George R. R. Martin. When I look at Pirates, I think of going back to even the Mahabharata times.
Yeah.
Shakuni, Shakuni was
Yes.
like that guy that
Yeah.
he was a little bit more nihilistic and he wanted
He
the
did have a
chaos.
mustache too, and he
He
totally.
also had I think there's something to be said. Yeah, exactly. No, but I think it just reminded me of, it's like, wow, this series takes so much from it parallels so much of both the distant past and even
Yeah. Well, it
modern tales.
it it,
Yeah.
it unabashedly, I think, uses the archetypes. You know, it
Mm.
plugs into these archetypes that handled well, you know, are just wonderful in this kind of storytelling. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
100%. Yeah, never felt like it never felt like a rehash of anything, and it
Mm,
also never felt like, even now seeing the quote unquote tropes of, really, it took tropes and turned them on their head. And now that turning it on its head is a trope in itself,
sure.
in modern fantasy. But even looking at, having read a lot of modern fantasy books, now looking at this, you don't feel like, oh, this has been done to death before. It
Yeah,
still is fresh because it's the way Tad Williams presents it, I think is beautiful. And it
yeah,
has a lot of subtlety to it too, you know?
totally agree.
Yeah. How about for you? Did any of these characters redeem themselves or?
I kind of feel for Inuluki, for the Storm King.
Yeah.
How do you forgive a genocide? You know,
Yeah.
that's it's amazing to me that you have characters like Jiriki
Mm.
and his little sister. Maybe it's easier for them because they're younger, but you notice that it was some of the older Civi, like their mother and so on. They're not as warm to the human characters, right?
Hmm.
Understandably, but they're
Yeah.
still doing the right thing, and somehow they found it in their hearts to fight for humanity, even. So yeah, I mean, and they recognize that, look, there are some bad humans and there are some good humans, and we're going to try to fight for the good ones. But
Yeah.
Inaluki has a point, it's something I look at in my own series, the idea that an
Hmm.
elf character would think, maybe we'd be better off without these humans around,
Right.
So I
Good point,
sympathize in
actually.
many ways. I really do. Of course, I'm a human and I'm team human, I guess. So I'm glad, that there are good people and people that make us worth redeeming, worth fighting for, worth defending. And you have people like Joshua and Elias. So the fundamental difference between those two, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, is that Elias is basically more self-serving, more selfish. And he's not like a complete narcissist or a sociopath like, Pryades, but he's still much more of a I'm the alpha guy, and he's kind of
Hmm.
a little insecure, and I think he's not as compassionate as Joshua. Joshua is compassionate. We see it everywhere in his arc where he
Yeah.
feels for people. His relationship with Daranoth, when he loses Daranoth, you can see this guy is genuinely beat up. He's probably in some ways ill-suited to be a leader, and he knows it
Hmm.
because he's too sensitive. Everybody realizes how sensitive he is, how compassionate he is. And in the end, he happily is like, peeking into the tent when Simon and Miriam are finally together. And he's like, "Yes, perfect. You guys, you just do your thing, and I'm gonna go be part of the League of the Scroll, and I'll be free." And I'm happy for Joshua that he gets,
Hmm.
and he finds out who his father is, of course, Camaras.
Yeah.
There's another guy who I think you could weave into this redemption theme as well. I mean, he for himself, he's weighed down by the guilt of having essentially fathered Joshua, uh,
Yeah.
and then lost Joshua's mother, who was married to King John, presbyter, and I forget her name, but she was his he was her protector, and he
Yeah.
he definitely broke some boundaries there by having this romance with her. It's kind of a King Arthur, Lancelot, Guinevere situation,
Right. Right. Right.
essentially, and Camaras was
Mm.
the Lancelot in that. In so many ways, I feel like Camaras was modeled after the classical idea of Lancelot,
Makes sense. Yeah.
but yeah, he
Mm.
Joshua, I think, is a good example of a character who it's compassion that drives him. And that's why we like him. He may be introverted and awkward around other people, but we know he's a good person inside, you know.
Mm. Yeah. Actually, it got me thinking. Elias and Joshua both ultimately were probably not the right people for the throne. Just that one realized it and one didn't.
Yeah,
And
well, I think it's when somebody says, I'm perfect for this, I should rule, then I'm wary of that
Yeah,
person.
right, right,
When someone
right.
says, "Oh, I really don't want to do this. I don't want this to be a king," it would just be, that's the person who should be there.
That's true. Yeah.
He'd be good
What
at it.
there's a quote about that I'm paraphrasing, but basically like it's that the problem with people who are pursuing power is like the right people for the position are the ones who don't want it or whatever that
Right.
don't want the power.
The reluctant
So,
leader. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. No, I was happy for Joshua there. I
yeah.
also felt that there are some beautiful relationships in here. We sort of touched on them a bit, but I want to ask you about your favorite relationships in the series, and I'll tell you mine as well. Because I have, some that really, got me at the end of all of this. And you mentioned, Simon and his
Rachel.
Rachel, the mother figure there. That was, even though it wasn't, you're so right. They weren't together for almost the entire series,
Yeah.
but somehow that really worked. But what were some of your favorite relationships that developed in the course of this?
I think my ultimate favorite is probably Simon and Benedict. I just think it's
Yeah,
like one of the
yes,
greatest friendships in the history of fantasy.
absolutely
Um,
agree. Absolutely agree.
it
Yeah,
just warmed my heart whenever they were together or whenever they were helping each other. I just thought it was just so beautiful. Again, like what you mentioned, is Simon saw through any prejudices, and he just saw through to the heart of the matter. That's kind of who Simon is in the series.
and
So
Benedict saw his goodness.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. I loved Simon and Miriamel's relationship with each other
Me
actually
too. Me
too.
too. Me too.
And I loved how Simon really cared for her and like how he there was a lot of sacrifice involved with that too. Even in the third book, when Miriamel wants to go and talk to Elias for one last chance to change
Yeah.
his mind, and Simon just goes. He questions it in his mind, but he's there with her, through it.
Yeah.
At great cost to himself, and so I think like I loved their relationship with each other. I thought was beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, Simon and Morganis, of course, in the first book was great. And I loved how again Morganis, like even though he kind of exits stage left in the first book, his teachings or his what he had jotted down or the things that he had tried to pass on, his legacy or so, really permeates throughout the rest of the series and also in Simon's thoughts.
Yeah.
So he's very much alive and present in the whole
Yeah.
series in some respect, if only in Simon's memory.
Warning him about the false messenger. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. I thought that the whole false messenger arc was fantastic as well. I love
These
how we
three
don't really
swords turn
find.
out to be a trap, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
whole time, the mission is actually them falling into a trap.
Crap, yeah. That's brilliant. And you really don't find that out till the end of, towards the end of the book, last book. So I
Yeah,
thought that was, yeah,
it's like, yeah,
amazing.
the whole time you're rooting for them, get the swords, and then they got the swords. You're like, whoa, no, don't get the swords.
Right, right. It's so cool. So cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
Um,
Let's
yeah,
talk a little. I want to talk
yeah,
because I totally agree with both of your picks, your
yeah,
first picks there. Let's talk about Simon and Miriamel first, I guess, because that's the
sure.
central. I mean, Benedict has his romance, which I found very touching as
Yeah, it's
well.
very sweet. Yeah.
With Siski, is that her name?
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
That's the
Siski.
short
Yeah,
version, anyway.
yeah, yeah.
But Simon and Miriamel. So this was, I think, handled really beautifully.
Mm,
And there were some things about it that if you could have expected Tad Williams to do this the conventional route, which is, oh, okay, so Simon is a scullion, he's unworthy, she's way above him socially, but oh, it turns out he's actually got royal blood in him, so it's okay at the end.
mhm.
It's actually much more complex than that. What he actually does is he has them fall in love with each other. Both of them. First, Simon, I think, starts to feel attraction toward Maria, who is Miriamel, and as a
Disguise.
not as a princess, and they form a genuine friendship at that point as well. But he's got, he's a 15-year-old kid who, obviously he's with a pretty young woman and he starts to feel, you know, uh, like we saw him earlier, he was kind of checking out some of the other castle, the girls in the castle, right? Like
Right, right. Yeah.
he's a 15-year-old boy. His hormones are going crazy and all that. But they have a real friendship there when she's Maria, and then it develops further as they go on their adventures. But where it really, really, for me, where they get to know each other as people, is on that journey you talked about, where in an act of compassion, she wants to try one more time to get to her
Mm,
father, and he, like a puppy, follows along, refuses to let her go. He wants to be her protector, which of course he has some romantic motivations there, but I think at the
right.
same time he's genuinely trying to be a good person and feels for his friend, and so complex mixture of motives there.
Mm,
But that journey they take together, I think, really is where they get to know each other, and she also reveals to him, I was with a man already. I'm not a virgin anymore, and
mhm,
you can't love me, because, and it's not, oh, I'm way above you, you Scullion. It's I'm not worthy of you, kind of, and that's her self-loathing and guilt and everything coming out there.
mhm.
And he initially reacts pretty negatively, which, for okay, at this point, what is he, 17? 17, 18?
Yeah.
He reacts pretty negatively, and his whole ideal picture of her kind of gets shattered a bit there.
I think.
But what I
Mm,
love is how he puts it back together and it comes to realize that that doesn't really matter, right? He still has feelings for her. So what were you going to say about that?
oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna say that I think he even mentions at some point in the book, or maybe it was Miriam in her own inner monologue, but it was like it wasn't what she said, it was the way she said
How
it,
she said it,
how
yeah.
she said it. It was like it was said to spite him, to tear him down, kind of
That's how
thing.
he felt.
Or
But
that's how he felt. Yeah, yeah.
we know that when she was saying it, it was more self-loathing,
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
So she didn't mean it
Exactly.
to make
Yeah.
him feel bad. It was more like, I'm terrible. Look at me. How could
Right.
you possibly love me? Right.
Mhm.
And her figuring out once he was absent makes sense too. Like when he was swallowed into the under the grave of John, and how she realizes during the time she's with Benedict and thinking that Simon's probably gone.
Mm,
Well, I think I might have actually loved him.
yeah.
So we get this evolution here, and then when they come back together at the end, and they sort of confess to each other how they feel, and Simon's in tears and saying, "I've always loved you." I thought that was really well done. That we get this evolves over the course of this, doesn't it? Over all four
Mm,
books, and we get some
really
ups and
does.
downs, misunderstandings, but they go from sort of particularly Simon goes from a sort of his first time he sees her as a princess is from a distance, right?
Mm,
And he sees her blonde hair waving in the wind, and she seems so inaccessible. So like he romanticizes her. She's on a pedestal, but he doesn't really see her as a person. By the end, they actually see each other as people. They're in love with their friend. They see each other's full humanity there at the end. I thought that was really well done.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think this is, kind of highlights the idea of preconceived notions.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that's the prejudice idea that is kind of permeated through various characters. But in this case, it being a preconceived notion of, oh, this person is inaccessible because of their station,
About
or I'm not,
class.
yeah, a class, yeah. And like you said, at the end, they see each other as equals, and all the labels start to fall away. It's like
Yeah.
when you see the person for who they are, the identity stuff doesn't really matter anymore.
Right.
It's the labels that we cling to and how much that's a reflection of that and kind of letting those go.
Yeah.
That was brilliantly done. Yeah.
Beautifully
And,
said. And the
and gradual. Yeah.
same with Benedict and Simon, right?
Yeah.
They that friendship is so deep and so beautiful. And of course, it's like a Legolas Gimli thing.
Yeah.
They're so different, but at the same time, that difference doesn't matter. They see each
Mm.
other fully as human beings. They respect each other, and it's also just fun when Benedict makes fun of Simon. he kind of he kind of teases him at times, and I love that.
It's great. And his specific way of talking makes it all the funnier, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Benedict's way of speaking in the Lander tongue, whatever it's called, the common
Right, right.
whatever. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah.
That's
Simon,
amazing.
Simon, you are being an idiot. Yeah.
I also loved Simon's relationship with the city culture, actually. I
Yeah.
think in the second book you get to see the city realm in full display.
Yeah. So
And I
good.
love again, it was like he cut through the heart of the matter. Everybody else looked at the city as again inaccessible. They're just this almost mythical people.
Yeah.
And
This
oh, that is a beautiful illustration. Oh
yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
I need to get these at some point. Maybe I'll see if I can find them on the black market,
Yeah.
on eBay somewhere or something. But yeah, no, gorgeous artwork. Yeah, I loved the way the city realm is portrayed, and then also Simon's ability to kind of cut through the heart of the matter, and again see them as just beings, fellow beings. Whereas everybody else regarded them as like mythical creatures or just you know adversaries or just again the othering. So I thought that whole relationship. I mean, him and Jericho, of course, and then him and what was the
A D2.
Aditu? Yeah, their relationship as well, and yeah, I just thought it was beautifully done.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
D2 also is someone who enjoys teasing Simon.
Yes.
Somehow I get so much joy from people teasing Simon. Poor Simon. Uh,
I know.
so him being of royal, as it turns out, at least a descendant of Ealhstan, the
Mhm.
founder of the scroll bearers or whatever it's called, um, the who actually was the person who slew the dragon beneath the castle, where
Mhm.
John takes the credit for it. And that's the foundation of his kingship. And there's
Yeah.
another theme here of history being written by the winners, but
Mm.
also, yeah, the ways in which there are a lot of false narratives in
Mm.
here that have to be seen through. You've got the whole false messenger about the
Mm.
swords. You've got John pretending to be something he's not. You've got Camaras also weighed down by the truth that no one knows but himself, and eventually he confesses it to
Mm.
Strongyard and then to his son Josua. You have a lot of these though ideas of the past that are actually false narratives and attempts to impose false narratives in order to
Mhm.
justify often violent actions in the present, right? So that's a pretty cool theme that Ted Williams does in there as well, right? I think.
That's a very good point. Yeah. It reminds me of, I had read a little note from Tad Williams in the beginning of my edition of Dragon Bone Chair where he basically says like nothing is as it seems.
Right.
And he kind of presents the theme of that false narrative right at the beginning before the book even starts.
Yep.
And so I was trying to actually read the series with that in mind in a
Uh-huh.
way. And it was both helpful, but also Tad Williams is so good at being subtle with it, you can never kind of tell where it's going to go.
Yeah.
You could look at it from that lens of like, oh, just because someone's saying something doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. Just because we know that in historically in the series something has happened in a particular way doesn't mean that that's how it's gone. But for example, with the false messenger, I never would have seen that coming.
Uh-huh.
I thought that was so brilliantly done, and I'm sure for you as a doing a reread now knowing that already, and when you were doing the reread, you probably could see the seeds of it leading up to that point.
Yeah.
But I would have never seen where it would have gone. I thought
Yeah.
that was really beautifully done. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm trying to think of characters we left out. Tiamat is one we haven't talked about,
Oh
and
yeah,
so
Tiamat.
many
Yeah.
themes that the othering and all that, and how people consistently underestimate him and dismiss him. How some of the actually the more repulsive characters even act like, oh, it talks,
Mhm,
they're
mhm.
just these because he's educated, that's somehow a surprise. So he's one who has to overcome a lot of prejudices, even from
Mm.
some of the nicer characters. Like, I love Isgrimnor, the Duke, the good Duke, but
Oh yeah.
sometimes he can be a bit, stuck in his ways, let's say.
Stubborn. Yeah.
And he has to, it's actually gratifying to see him overcoming his prejudices, and he gradually comes to respect Tiamat, and understand his value, and how intelligent he is, and so on. So he's a bit gruff about it, but he eventually, he's got a good heart, Escribnor.
Yeah.
He comes along. But yeah, Tiamat is one who, I think is a great character for um, showing us that the stereotypes are just so not only of limited use, but they're
Mm.
actually invalid much of the time. And that once we discard them, we can actually see a person,
Yes. Yeah.
Get rid of those
Yeah.
dumb labels, and then you'll see the person and their value. Yeah.
I love how gradual they all were too. That discovery for each character that went through that journey, whether it be Scrimnur about Tiamat or even Simon about Miriamel or um, I loved how gradual it was. It never felt rushed. It always took its time to get to that point,
Yeah.
and oftentimes that arc would be 3, 4 books long. And that was perfect because it allowed it to feel more natural. It's kind of more reflective of how there's not usually an aha moment. Maybe there's a door that opens that allows one to kind of open their mind to a different way of thinking. But it's never, I used to think this way, now I think this way. It's very much a series of events or experiences that lead to that. And I love how for each character it felt that way,
Yeah.
you know?
And how they all come
Mm.
into their own in some way, like Strong Yard and Tiamat and others, eventually find out that they had this sort of inferiority complex, thinking, well, how can we possibly be scroll bearers when all these geniuses were there before us? But they actually proved to be up to the task,
Mm-hmm.
Even there are some losses in here, though. It's not all happy. We do have, as I mentioned earlier, there's Megwin and Eolair. We can talk about that.
Mm.
We lost, what's the name of the owl lady? Oh gosh.
Oh man. I'm trying to see if I could remember. I'd written some notes down.
Also the Niskis, or whatever they're called, and the Dueros. There's some tragedy, I think,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
them as well, being people who were mistreated, and eventually, they do contribute in ways toward the final victory,
right.
with the
Yeah.
knowledge about the swords from the Dueros. But they're afraid to do much more than what the necessity dictates in the moment.
Hmm.
What is the owl lady's name here?
I don't quite remember.
Galoe.
Oh yes, right. Yeah, Gillowy. Yeah.
We do lose her, and one of the actually the most sad, really, I felt moments is in this book. No, this book, the first part of Green Angel Tower, we have the
Yeah.
battle at the Stone of Farewell, where
Mm.
Fangbald is ultimately tricked into being on the ice there.
That
Um,
was a brilliant, brilliant moment. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I can't remember the name of the mayor, but he makes an incredible sacrifice there. You mentioned sacrifice earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
He makes I mean, he's one of the tiniest, most minor characters, but boy, that's a moment that stands out to me, where
It
he
does.
and his daughters die in the course of saving everyone else by getting
Mm.
ditching that jerk Fangbald. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's amazing how actually characters, uh, big and small, all have a role to play.
Elfgrim the mayor. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Right. Yeah.
Deserves his name. Yeah. Sorry, you were
So
saying
good.
big and small characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no. Like minor and major characters all have a role to play to that point, you know. Him and his daughters were few pages of few pages of page time there in the series,
Yeah.
and they make such a huge impact on the ultimate outcome, really.
Yep. And characters like Esorn, Scribner's son,
Mhm.
who he dies.
Yeah.
And that is just that's tough to
That's
see.
the one. Yeah.
Iskribnur and Guthrun
Mm,
just absolutely shattered. That is not something you can ever come back the same from losing a child like that. Even though
yeah.
he's an adult, but so there's some real sorrows, some real losses in here. Gilloy and Isorn and Maegwyn's fate
Wins. That
is.
was a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted so badly for this poor person to have some light in her life, but in the end, the fact that she was able to help Simon was a crucial thing, I think. And Simon
Mhm.
was able to tell Eolair she was herself before the end, and I never would have
Yeah.
made it without her. I feel like someday Eolair is going to pick up some pieces and learn how to carry this grief, but that's a tragic, he didn't realize that she loved him and she was treating him kind of trying to push him
At
away
arm's
with
length. Yeah.
despair and all of that, that sort of years of miscommunication wrapped up with the terrible loss of her father and her brother and the
Mm.
trauma inflicted on them as a people as well. Just that's tough. I mean, Williams does not shy away from the tragic in here, does he?
Yeah. No, not at all. I do love how specifically with certain characters like Eloware is very interesting because I think he had trouble accepting until Simon told him,
Yeah.
that Megwyn was herself towards the end and made this ultimate sacrifice and everything. It's kind of like taking the thorn out of a lion's paw, in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
And with Megwyn, I loved how she fully accepted her fate at the end, and she kind of used it to help. But she didn't shy away from it, you know, which I thought was beautifully done as well.
And it's the
Yeah.
truth is these losses, these tragedies, make the victory feel all the more compelling, right? That they do
Do you know
defeat.
what it costs?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
victory without a cost just feels shallow, doesn't it? That life is a balance of loss and joy, of tragedy and beauty, and you really see that handled well here. I think we feel the intensity of the victory all the more, and
Mm.
we feel the happiness of characters who survive. And we're happy for people like Simon and Miriamel and Binabik and Siski and all of the survivors. And thank goodness Kantaka made it. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, yeah. Oh God, yeah, I know.
If Kantaka hadn't made it, I would have had to write
I
a
would
next
riot.
letter to Chad Williams. So,
We know that that was the real reason we want to continue on to the Last King of Osten Ard.
yeah, what's Kantaka doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Anything we left? I'm sure there are things we left out, Nikhil, but this is a vast and beautiful series that we could talk a lot for a long time. But
Yeah,
you want to bring it?
I was just gonna say, I was amazed at the depth and complexity and nuance of the characters, given that really it is only 3 books or four if you count, the tetralogy. Three makes four, and I see series that are longer than this that don't quite
Yeah.
capture that depth of subtlety. And it's interesting because the format of the series is small enough that it could feel rushed at some point, or it could feel like, oh, this character wasn't quite fleshed out, you know? Oh, if we had another book, maybe we could have gotten more. Or the opposite problem, So I feel like he really struck a balance, and you could appreciate the story for what it is, which is at its heart like a coming of age story,
Yeah.
adventure, but then you can dive as deeply as you want, and you could probably have a whole discussion just on Simon and Miriamel's characters
Sure.
and their parallel arcs. You could have a whole discussion based on that. So I think there's so much to dive into,
Yeah.
which I think is beautiful.
I
Um,
agree. I agree. I'm so looking forward to the last King of Osten Ard, and
yes.
I'm guessing that a much older Simon and Miriamel will figure in it. Almost certainly because of Aditu's prophecy, we're going to see Joshua's children, his
Mhm.
twins, and yeah, Vorjeva's. hopefully still there as well. I enjoyed the
Mm.
relationship between Vorjeva and Josua and how she kind of forced him to see what an idiot he was, and how she forced him to see his dignity. I really enjoyed her arc as
Mm.
well.
Yeah.
This very strong woman who, finally made Josua see how important she was to him. I feel like he was very neglectful of her.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. And it was one of those things where again, it was through compulsion. It wasn't a malicious intent or anything like that. It
Right,
was just
right.
like he had a lot on his mind and he's trying to figure out what's the next move and he's not really paying attention to her. But I think she grounded him in a lot of ways.
Yes, that's a good.
She yeah, I think she kept him from losing himself in the process of trying to be victorious.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll see what little Darnoth and Dara are up to. I love that they named the boy after Darnoth,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, as a
100%. Yeah, I love that it takes place at a time when some of these characters will still be around, that we'll have a
hopes.
tie
Yeah.
to. I hope so. Yeah.
Gotta
Yeah.
have Benedict back too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So,
Definitely.
all right.
So,
Well, thank you so much, my friend. This has been a great way to just gush and process our experience with this incredible story. I think
mm,
it's really helpful to process something like this after you read it. I mean, it's one thing to read it and appreciate it all by yourself
yeah.
and wipe the tears, but it's another to actually get a chance to talk to someone about it. So I thank you very much, my friend, for this discussion.
Oh, thanks for having me, Philip. It's first of all always so much fun to chat with you about this stuff, and then secondly, like I do feel, you know, to that point, I can look at this series. I loved this series when I read it. And now getting to have these conversations and think back on some of the themes and the characters, it like makes me appreciate it that much more. And it's a nice little addendum to the reading experience.
The
So
experience.
it's just great that we can have discussions like this. So thanks for having me.
Yep, that's what we love around here. And if you're still watching, thank you so much for watching. I will have a link to Nikhil's channel in the description. It is Shelf Esteem. That's his booktube channel, but you may also know this, but I love telling people Nikhil is also a brilliant composer who has composed some incredible music for film and television. Also composed the Adan Trilogy theme song, which you can see on the home page of my channel, which was played by my daughter Rohana on the cello. But yeah, no, he has two channels. In other words, his BookTube channel, Shelf Esteem, but also there's Nikhil Koparkar, his music channel, which there's a lot of great music there to check out. And hopefully some awards coming your way, Nikhil. I know that you had a real victory here with a recent nomination that I
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah,
very much for
maybe I'll
celebrating.
meet Kevin Bacon at the award show. Never know.
I hope so. I hope so. Maybe Kevin Bacon will get to meet you.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. Anyway, but thank you so much, and thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you all in January for the last King of Osten Ard. Until next time. Whoops, I did the wrong thing there. I've only been doing this for 6 years now.